right. Hi, everyone. We're back with an episode about organized religion and church. So, I don't think it's a topic we've really covered before. So, super curious to dive in. And this was actually a listener suggestion. So, excited to be addressing that as well. So, I want to open up. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's pick Maryn to start. Yeah, that's how we're gonna make executive decisions here. Yeah, so when you think about religion, I'm curious what comes to mind, especially as it relates to church.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever considered myself to be a religious person. Um, like my mom was raised Christian, I think, sort of, and then my dad is more Buddhist, and so I've experienced both, but I would say we were more of a spiritual family growing up. Um, and so I think I always thought like of the letter of religion versus the spirit of religion. And I had definitely seen examples growing up where people are very like stringent about following the letter or the rule of religion, but they may not necessarily embody the spirit behind it. And I'm sure we can think of a million examples, in our world right now where religion can actually be weaponized for evil. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, like in my background. And I think I still consider myself to be more of a spiritual person. And I'm very open minded. And I kind of, I don't know, I try to find the similarities, among different belief systems. And I'm very open to different types of beliefs that resonate with me, at different times in my life.
Do you go to church now, or do you attend?
I think for my family, it's more of like a community or social based practice. So it's definitely for like community activities and for funerals and for weddings and fundraisers and things like that. So I would say it's more tied to that than I don't really go like every Sunday, but I definitely attend services, here and there.
Yeah.
And what
I
of
mean,
yeah?
similar, same. Like, I grew up. So, my family, I think, and when I say family, I mean my extended family, I think we have like influences of Presbyterian Christians. Um, and so I grew up with like having a family pastor, come to our like gatherings. And my aunt was very, I mean, they're probably still very close, but they were inseparable. Like my pastor and my aunt were inseparable. And so I grew up knowing Christianity and sort of my mother sang in the church as well. And so there was like this, we're Christian family, but not really, because Korean Christians have we still do ancestor worship, not worship, but we still like have, I don't want to call it ancestor worship, but like we still have celebrations honoring our ancestors. And so it's like there's sort of a very interesting dichotomy or like juxtaposition or intersection between, yeah, like our Korean culture and then also Christianity. So I've always been like, our Christianity does not look like other Christians, like beliefs and practices. And so I always felt a little inferior, or felt like, I wasn't assimilating enough because of that. But then I also want to say that that was when it was church time. But then in our household, my mother was really open, and we did not practice Christianity in the way, like you said, Maryn, by the letter, by the written rules. We did what we thought was right, and we were open to tenets from Buddhism or from like, I know that my grandmother, we would also go to the, Buddhist temples. And so we definitely I totally, when you said like you align with practices and beliefs that align with your values, and I am totally in alignment there. And so I think to answer your question, Leah, like my understanding of religion was more that it's a way to access our spirituality, but it's not the only way to, I think, legitimize beliefs or something along those lines. And so now I'm curious about you, Leah. What about you?
Yeah. Well, this conversation it came up because my son started asking questions a few weeks ago about what happens when we die, and just like asking like these big questions. And I found myself answering like, well, some people believe that you go to heaven. And it's funny like to distance myself from that because that's also how I was raised growing up. My mom was Catholic, my dad was Presbyterian. Growing up, we had a Filipino Presbyterian church. We went every Sunday. My mom was treasurer. We'd have family parties with the pastor coming to our house. Like, it was a very tight-knit community. I went to Sunday school, grew up with the same kids from elementary through high school, had piano recitals at that same church. It was just amazing to see how big of a part church was in my life growing up. I was dedicated, baptized.
Yeah.
The Christian way of doing things, right? And then once I moved out of the house, once I went to college, like I lost all of that. And part of it was I couldn't find like a church I felt I belonged to. At that time, my parents also like leadership changes that happened at the church, and we no longer went. Anyway, so like my adult life has been this trying to go to church, similar to like when there's Christmas or Easter, like moments when it makes sense to go to church, funerals, weddings, whenever I found myself in a church. It's very interesting. Yeah, just going back to like how I answered my son, because I'm like, that was my life, like for, like a third of my life was revolved in church. And now here I am like, well, like you, instead of like, you may go to heaven or you may not, it's like, some people believe that. Do you believe that? And I think that's what got me thinking about this is, what purpose did it serve at the time? Was it just social? It was an entry point to connect to, I guess, spirituality as a whole. Like, what is the right thing? What are morals? Those kinds of things. But then how you interpret something like the Bible definitely change. I mean, like, this is why we have so many versions of Christianity, right? It's so many people interpreting the Bible in different ways. But I want to throw that out there. When you think about yourselves, and how would you answer the question, like, what do you believe? What happens when we die?
Ooh, Maryn.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really believe in like a heaven and hell per se. I don't like the like religious beliefs that really are intolerant of people, where like I've heard those stories from friends where it's like, oh, you don't believe in God, you're going to hell. Like, I don't believe that way, but I definitely think that like the spirit never dies. So when we do transition, it's into a different realm, and that you're still in spirit form somewhere. I think I do believe in some form of karma, where it's like what you did in this lifetime does have consequences. That was something my mom said. Actually, when Ray and I interviewed her, she was like, I used to think that karma comes back in a lifetime, but maybe it comes back in other lifetimes. So, because sometimes I'm looking at people and I'm like, how can you get away with so much? But yeah, I think that, the impact that you make in your lifetime on the people that you love and everything, that is a real thing and that it lasts and that you can still engage with your loved ones even, after they've passed on. And it's just in a different way. Like, I kind of believe that they might be on a higher frequency than us.
Hmm.
And so we can't necessarily communicate with them in the same way, but I definitely feel my mom's spirit in other ways. Like I get signs from her in dreams and things like that. So it's almost like I have to tap into my own spirit or higher consciousness to really hear her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's
I
just
think,
yeah.
that reminds me of like my grandmother. I think another anomaly to like when I was younger, I was like watching my family and seeing how so many contradictions could coexist. And like one case in point is like my grandmother, like she actually spoke to our ancestors. So like, and this was a normal thing. Like my mother and my grandmother would be talking on just any given day, and some of their conversation pattern would be like, uh, my mother asking her, oh, okay, so what did grandfather or whoever, um, what did he tell you, last night or this morning when, and, like my grandmother would be like, yes, he woke me up at 4 a.m. this morning and told me blah, 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 blah. And so, like, there was a lot of, there was a lot of confidence in this idea that our spirits kind of lived among us and that they never really left. It's just that their physical presence had left, but that their, influence and their thoughts still lived with us now. And so I feel like even though like Christianity was sort of the organized religion that I could subscribe to tell people where positioned myself in society, but then in actuality, like all of my observations about what was happening both behind and in front of the curtains was that there is no such thing as heaven and hell, that it's more of a control tool, that people in power use to drive fear and shame. And I mean, that those are things I, came into realization a lot later, like decades later. But they did draw upon the observations that I had as a young person, looking at all of the different narratives I think that ran parallel. And I wanted to mention, like, so to your son asking, where do we go after we die? Like, I think that that's something that I can relate to. I think I started asking my mother when I was very young, like, who is God? What is God? Where did we come from? Where are we going? I've always been very, very existential. And so I think I even remember when I was younger just being so scared of like this uncertainty of why does nobody. I mean, I now know that it's like astrophysics, and no, that's not it. Not astronomy. It's something related to the universe that there actually are people studying like the parallels between consciousness and what they actually see in the literature and science of the universe, and those kind of run parallel. But when I was younger, nobody around me questioned that or thought about it. And I just was always alone, feeling really scared because nobody was telling me that there's a connection. And so I guess my question to you guys is, do you, because I recently, for the past several years, have been so afraid of death. And so I'm wondering, like, how do your emotions come into play when you think about your spirituality and our existence, and also stemming from what you guys observed and learned about spirituality and religion when you were younger? Like, how are you resolving or reconciling?
Oh, I to take that.
Do you want to take both? You can answer your own question and Ray's question. Double back to back.
I can do double back to back. Well, so the reason, this is coming up for me too, right? You know, the question, what happens when we die? I tie it back to, I think then my questions go back to like, why am I introducing my kids to Jesus and God, even if it's just like on Christmas, right? There is this guilt, this inherent guilt still, like they need to know the story of Jesus. Otherwise, why are they celebrating Christmas? And I do that to myself. Same with Easter, right? Like, yes, Easter is about eggs and new bunnies. It's also about rebirth, So it's definitely ingrained, and I think for me, like when I think about spirituality, I sometimes wonder, like, if I didn't grow up in an organized religion type of environment, what I think is deeply about spirituality and what these existential questions, would I have formed my own beliefs? Because I think when you have a prepackaged religion, right, where you do think about like the actions you take now have consequences later, and then this connects to your whole life essentially, right? Then I think it gives you this perspective enough to like look inside yourself, right? I remember even in college, every night before I went to sleep, I prayed, like talking to God about my day and then what I hoped would happen, what I didn't hope would happen. And I eventually stopped, but it was like one of those lingering things even after I stopped going to church. I'm like, but why? And part of it is, everyone says like it's great to have this sense of not feeling alone. I think that's something religion gave me. It's something my dad inherently, he was very religious and spiritual, right? And basically that idea like you never walk alone when you believe in a higher power. It's something I want to instill in my kids. Like, you don't have to believe it's God per se, but believe that there's more to life than just this life, And I think to me, that's always been a motivating, freeing kind of thought, that you're not alone. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that's how I perceive it even now. And part of that is it's so hard to explain, or how do you tell a little kid that, right? Like, there's more to life than just you, like you have to trust yourself even when no one else believes. But then to say it's Jesus or God, right? Then it becomes like, oh, there's this ambiguous, nebulous idea that someone has your back, even if you don't feel like it. And I think that's the concept that something like religion offers, even though, I don't necessarily agree with the interpretation of whatever pastor happens to be, doing the sermon at the time. I definitely, am pretty critical about, is that what that meant? Or, what's the bottom line here? Are you just trying to get more money out of me? But, but that aside, I think that's what it is. Like, it's that feeling of, hope. When we had our grief episode, right? I think there was a lot of that, Maryn, the seeing the signs, I experienced similar things, and it's that connection. And once again, it's hard to explain, at least I found it hard to explain to my kids, outside of saying God or Jesus, how do you explain, something other than the self, at that age. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fitting that we're having this recording today because it's actually my mom's, the anniversary of her passing is today. And it's also the anniversary of her sister's passing. So that was one of those moments after she passed. And I saw on her phone that she had her sister's anniversary in her calendar. And that was one of those crazy moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, there's definitely more to this. I mean, she's with her sister who is her best friend. And, Yeah. And I mean, I feel that because of the signs that I've received, that being one example, I mean, just other ones that are totally unexplainable in any other way, that I do really, my belief has strengthened. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of gone from like a theoretical, comforting idea to like, I believe it, like,
Mm-hmm.
on a deeper level. So I think, I mean, one funny thing that I was thinking of is I had prayer trauma because,
Mm.
back in the big earthquake that happened in the 90s, I think it
The
was
Yeah.
Northridge one?
94. Yeah. That was one of the few times I prayed when I was younger because we were supposed to
Mm-hmm.
go to the ice capades the next
Oh.
day. And I prayed and I was like, I am so looking forward to the ice capades. Like, please God, like, let nothing get in the way of this. And then that night, there was that crazy earthquake. So, and we obviously didn't go. So I didn't pray for a long time after that. I'm like, what did I do? Um,
That is
but
traumatizing. Wait, how
yeah,
old
but
were
I'm,
you?
how old were we in 94?
Oh, I don't know, 10?
10.
11?
Yeah, I definitely
You were 11,
elementary
yeah. 10,
school.
11.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
so
That's
I mean, I've
brutal.
definitely prayed like during COVID, anytime that I feel really scared and like I would kind of pray and just pray on my loved ones' safety
Right.
and their health. But I think after my mom's passing, it's become more personal, where when I
Mm.
do pray, it's not just to, like you said, Leah, like a nebulous, like a God
Yeah.
figure, but it's more like I pray to my spirit family, to my
Mm-hmm.
mom, to my spirit guides. I feel that I am protected and I have, higher powers watching over me, like in more of a personal way, not just like you know, not just God. And that
Yeah.
makes me feel it's like it strengthens the connection, I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think, because before I'd kind of just pray to this general God, but I didn't, yeah, feel the same depth of connection. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
as you were talking about, it is the anniversary of your mom's passing, but then also, like, I know that you guys had to cancel her memorial, to actually, like, not celebrate, but to memorialize, um, and acknowledge the anniversary of your mom's passing. So I'm wondering how you guys are feeling through that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just for safety's sake. Being
Yeah.
in Los Angeles, there's a lot of crazy things going on. And so, yeah, it is actually a Buddhist tradition where, like, you gather. So it's families that are gathering that had lost their loved ones in the month of June. So it was kind of like a group service. Um, but yeah, with Trump sending all this,
Oh,
the
gosh.
military and, stoking fear, it wasn't safe to do. So, I mean, the world is just such a crazy place. I feel
Yeah.
like, from COVID and then even now, like through my pregnancy, we've had the wildfires and we've had so many traumatic events. And yeah, I think my connection to my spirituality and like the people on the other side has really gotten me through it because I just trust that I'm protected and I kind of feel that I am protected. Not that I'm invincible, but it's given me comfort. Like I've really needed that because when you look out at the world, it is scary and it
Yeah.
can be, yeah, very hopeless sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, for sure. And Leah, you mentioned earlier, like, I mean, you guys are both talking about this idea of community and being able to know that you're supported. And I think about that a lot, especially because every community or everyone who, like, there's always, when we look at everybody doing things and like creating gangs or trying to take democracy down, like there's always this foundation of wanting to create community, because they don't feel like certain groups of people don't have their safety in mind. And so when I think about religion, and particularly in Christianity, like they talk about how, you know, the Christian God is the only God, and you cannot believe in any other God. And I think that's really the reason I fell out of Christianity completely, is because of this sort of, can I call it rhetoric, or this philosophy, I guess, that there is only one right answer.
Yeah.
And I think, that really disrupts my values as an artist and as a minority and as just everything that I stand for. I think when you say that there's only one right answer to something, that it's not about the protection of everyone, but about the protection of just one group of people who gather together in an echo chamber to continue and perpetuate either that they're superior or that others don't deserve the same things that they do. And so I think that was really the genesis of my fallout. And I think of how that is fueling the fall of democracy, I think, in our own nation. And I just wonder about you guys, like, how should we be doing better? Like, how should those who are spiritual or those who are religious, how can we do better?
I mean, one thing I thought of that you mentioned is just, and this was something I think that we talked about in our old project that Ray and I did, but it's just like fear-based versus love-based. Like, that's very clear to me. And so some, whether it's religious communities or other communities, they're based on fear. Like, whether you're really afraid of death or you're afraid of being alone. And then sometimes that, it doesn't evolve in the best way, because it becomes like this superiority complex where it's like, well, we're doing things the right way, right? Like, you see it all the time in this day and age where there's just a lot of fear mongering. I mean, that's what Trump, his whole thing is built on, is tapping into that fear. And so I think the key is really to come from a place of love. Because like you're saying, like, if you are truly, it's kind of like the idea of confidence, where it's like there's a false sense of confidence, a false sense of power. But if you're truly confident in yourself, then you should be able to be accepting of people that are different than you. Not necessarily that violate your, personal boundaries or beliefs, but I tend to be attracted to communities like that. Like, we used to go to a spiritual community called Agape here, which was non-denominational, and they, had pictures of the wall of Gandhi and, all of these different spiritual leaders, and they were very, inclusive, and they spoke to people kind of on this foundational level of we don't judge you, whatever you want to believe, but we're all about love and caring for each other, And they kind of talked about how the divine was within each of us individually, and kind of fostering that way of like, how do you express that divine nature, in your life. So yeah, I feel like it kind of comes down to that.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I think what makes me angry, Ray, to your point, is, the Christianity point of view and just what's going on in the world. Like, there is this one right answer. I think of that also the hypocrisy of the idea of what Christianity is supposed to be teaching in terms of values, of morals, all these things, and then the practice of it definitely excluding people, making other people feel like they're in the wrong, they're going to hell, like all the things. And definitely like that incongruency, like just, I think adds to that tension of, like I think the idea of spirituality, of love, like makes sense because it feels like the natural way to do things. And then, Yeah, it's just people preying on other people who
Mm.
have this vocabulary, have these ideas already, right? And then pointing them in the direction of, yeah, just dividing people up. So I
And
don't,
it comes back
yeah,
to that letter versus spirit, because
Hmm.
like the leaders that
yeah,
we're seeing today, do you really think that they embody the values of Christianity?
yeah,
Like they're clearly just using it, you know, as a weapon for power and control,
Uh-huh.
and to boost their own ego or distract people from the evil stuff they're doing. So yeah, in that way, like in my mind, it's very clear, you
yeah.
know, and I feel like I have a good radar for that. Like I've met people throughout my life where it's like they're super
Like,
Christian and they're super dedicated and
something's
they're, you
wrong.
know, they're putting in the time, but yet they're always arguing with people, always judging
Spidey
people,
sense.
kind of being an a-hole on the daily, you know?
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, okay. So there's a lot of parallel to this conversation with what I'm synthesizing on my own podcast, right? And the whole podcast really was to identify how can we better or how can we reform our education systems. And now the question really is coming down to like authoritarian,
Mm.
authoritarian, should we be authoritarian towards our children, of telling them this is what you need to do because this is the right answer of how you're going to be successful in the future. And the other side, which is to lead with student autonomy and letting them trust their own intuition and be led by curiosity and interest and joy. And I just think about that parallel here in religion and what you said, Maryn, about these people who are using religion to justify very horrible things that they're doing on behalf of or to humanity. And I just kind of think about this idea of so many organized religions being authoritarian, of saying, we're only going to protect you. Like, it's very gang mentality, right? It's like, we're only going to protect you. We're only going to have community if you abide by these laws. And I guess there, in many ways, like you could argue that that's kind of what democracy is too. I mean, when we look at the justice system, it's like, we are going to put you in prison if you don't follow these laws. And, you know, I do think that some of those laws are very helpful. Um, Particularly, well, I won't go there, but I do think that a lot of those laws can also be very harmful because I think that the way that we should be, I guess, I don't know. This might go in a very, very different direction. So maybe I'll just ask a question instead. It's like we have critiques and also we see some benefits, like, you know, of religion, particularly around community building and having that sort of feeling of protection, of feeling like you're not alone. And I wonder, how do we sort of offset the damaging aspects of organized religions? Um, and how do we, I mean, I think, Maryn, your example of the Agave Church is very good, and it's that it's love based. But I wonder, is there like a way that we can sort of figure out how to make organized religions less divisive and more community and love based? Like, are there ways to achieve that, or does that actually fundamentally go against what religions stand for or the basis of them?
I've always thought I think both of you have watched Oprah's Super Soul Sundays. But a lot of those interviews and books, I think, are thematically around this concept of spirituality outside of organized religion. Not that there's a place you can go to, right? But I think it resonates with a lot of people. I see the parallels, too, to your podcast synthesis, right, of encouraging autonomy in children to think about what they want to learn, what they're curious about, right? Once again, like, yes, some structure, some rules are good. And then there becomes a point where the rules keep happening, keep building up or happening or whatnot, right? And then we have, like, now some states where it's illegal to, like, have an abortion and stuff. And then it's like, wait, like, at what point that these rules meant to protect us from other harmful people are causing harm, right? So I think it's that, like, finding other like-minded people, forming something around that. And yeah, I think where I struggle with this is I can't see myself, like, I can't see myself, like, extending a hand or, like, showing love to someone who I know idealistically has counter thought, like, doesn't believe what I believe in, right? And I think that's what makes it challenging, is, like, I want to be inclusive, and also, if you're someone who is actively hating other people, it is hard to, like, reach out and be like, oh, like, let me be okay with you in this world, because I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's a big question. I think it all starts in the home, Like, I wonder if the listener who requested this, I think, was maybe interested in how we're dealing with, you guys are dealing with that with your kids. But I think it all starts with education in the home, because that's how you break the cycles, right? I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing if you really are religious and that's, like, a positive force in your life and you want to, pass that on to your kid. I think that's great. I think, me personally, the way I would raise my kid is to be like, people do believe different things, but really just teaching them, like, basic common decency, having a sense of compassion for your fellow person. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's like some even tenets of, like, Buddhism, where it's like being totally detached from your ego and totally detached from things. I mean, it's not really realistic. We live in the real world. And so, like, even with Christianity, like, this promise of heaven, like, you're going to be in this utopia. I mean, it's like, okay, but yeah, we're still living day to day. So how do we do what we can, now? But I think that's where it starts. And I think I've said this on other episodes, but I really think it's about pouring your energy into, the community spaces, your family, like, where you can have an impact, and, standing up for your values too, but not trying to make the world something it's not. Like, waste all your energy trying to fight the evil forces. Just pouring your energy into, these love-based places, and that will have an effect.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something that I saw. So I've been on Threads for the past 3 days, just sort of, I guess, resisting in my own way, because I'm not in the States right now, and I kind of feel really powerless. Like, I want to stand up and protest, but I don't know how to do that really without actually being there. So I've been on Threads, like, supporting all the people who are protesting and speaking up and standing up and reposting and offering my thoughts. And there's a lot of people, like, in the Asian American community. Oh my gosh. Should I go there? Okay, well, I'm just going to bring up this example.
We're Asian besties.
Yeah, yes. Right? Exactly.
Soapbox.
Okay, all right. Well, I feel like there are a lot of people who are Asian American not protesting and not speaking up because of their proximity to whiteness, right? And because there are a lot of Asian Americans who've spent all of our lives trying to prove ourselves that we are worthy of belonging, you know? And I will admit that I was in that camp. I was scared to speak up because I didn't want to lose everything that I had built all my life, proving that I was a good one, right? That I assimilated properly and that I did all the right things. But, in my political sort of journey, I have realized that all of the things that I did to prove myself will never offset the fact that I am still not white, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think there are a lot of people in the Asian American community who are still desperate to prove that they've properly assimilated, they did everything the right way, that still have not made that realization. And then there are also people who are like demonizing and shaming Asian Americans for doing that, for having to prove themselves and saying, "Are you blind?" And I also think that that's very damaging. That you cannot shame someone into fighting the fight. You can only help them see how they're contributing to the problem, and by gently or forcefully inviting them into the conversation, because I don't think shame works. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
fear works. And so to to people who are Asian American who still are not seeing that, hmm, this could go in a very like shame-based way, and I am not intending to do that. And I'm seeing this in real time, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this properly, but I feel like one of the posts that I saw yesterday was somebody who was Asian American, like shaming Asian Americans for not speaking up. And what I think is more productive to do is to say, hey, I've been there, or I've seen people who've been there, and this is how they've come into their awakening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or by showing that they're safe, and that by speaking up that our community can only be stronger, and not just our Asian American community, but the entire community, right? And so I feel like having conversations with people who are scared to speak up and say, this is how to enter the conversation, or let me help you, or what do you think about this, is more productive than saying, you guys aren't doing a good job. What are you guys thinking? Why aren't you saying anything? And so I don't know. Um, that's kind of what I've been seeing in the Asian American community, that there are people who are speaking up because not only is it relevant to their lives, but also they see that it's liberating everybody from the patriarchy or the colonialism or the white supremacy or whatever it is. And then there are people who are really scared or don't think that it applies to them at all. And so I'm wondering what you guys are seeing, or yeah, your thoughts around what's happening. This
Yeah,
is
I mean, I
totally
hear
off the
you.
topic.
Well, I hear you, but I do think like people are just in different places in the spectrum.
True.
And so some people are just fed up, you know? And so like some people are way over here and they base their whole lives on activism and
Yeah.
they take stands and all of that. And so I don't necessarily think it's that person's job to pull someone who's like way further down the line on the spectrum.
Mm,
I think someone who's closer to them on the spectrum who just recently is going through their awakening would be more effective in educating them. I mean, because I've gone through those moments where it's just like you're full of righteous anger. Like, I think a lot of people are seeing what's going on, where they're just ripping families apart, you know. I mean, putting kids on trial, like, just, you know, and this is something that happened within my family just a couple generations ago, where they lost everything, the families were torn apart. Um, and so, how can you not be angry? Like, I think it's just, you know, emotionally, it's hard to just be like, okay, let me be fully centered, and I don't think we should center the people that aren't as activated. So I think it just depends where you are on the journey. And it's complicated because, for Asian Americans, a lot of that is like their trauma response, right, to their ancestral trauma and us, the model minority myth, and all the things that we've touched on. But yeah, I think it's kind of like gathering within the community that is in the place that you're at. That's what I would say. Like in an ideal world, yes, that would be great if we could all be endlessly patient and endlessly, compassionate, but we're human, and like we're all triggered by what's happening in the world, and especially when we have we're very close to it. Like we have best friends who are being affected, or, loved ones who are being affected. We're not going to have the patience to pull somebody who's all the way down the line to start opening their eyes. I really think it's like anything. You can't really force anyone to become conscious. It has to be their choice, and they have to be willing. And I think that's the lesson that I've learned as I've been on this journey, that it's not really my job to pull everyone else along. Like I'm just going to live my life and invest in the causes and communities I care about. And if I influence people, that's really great. But, yeah, that's what I would say.
No, yeah, thanks for that perspective. Yeah, that's really good.
I'm imagining myself on that spectrum, right? And I'm like, well, I'm awakened, and also I don't think I'd go in the middle of a protest and start, holding up signs and stuff, right? And it's interesting. I think back to when there were Asian hate crimes, right? A few years ago. And one of the things I did end up doing was attending this webinar on what it means to be a bystander and how you can still be an ally. And there was 5 different ways, from confrontation to just, how can you be helpful, but not be in the middle of the thing happening. And I guess I think it's something like that, right? What is, if someone is close to being awakened or is receptive enough for that, right? It's kind of then you don't throw them in the deep end, but what are the opportunities then to that, are just barely out of that comfort zone to get them thinking about okay, well, here's then what you can do, right? I think the other thing is, as personally as Asian Americans, I mean, we could easily be the targets, even though we're citizens, we were born here. The fear of that all just being taken away because someone just assumes is scary, right? And I think it's those pieces too, just to round out the perspectives, right? I think some people just aren't aware. Some people are trying to assimilate. I think others are just, I don't want to put myself in the middle of it because I have too much to lose. And, and it's okay, but I want to be helpful. And I also don't want to throw myself in the middle of it right now. Anyway, I'm just verbalizing what I'm thinking personally, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just with the religion conversation, there's no one right way to do things.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to contribute and get involved, based on your comfort level, based on your gifts and talents, And so I feel yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. But it's so enmeshed, the religion, political, it's all.
The moral of the story is, so as we're wrapping up this episode, does everyone want to kind of give one, I don't know, lasting, lingering?
Yeah, how are we going to wrap this up?
We just want
it's all untangled, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, one thing I see is, right, the authoritarianism is not the answer. Having one right answer and riling everybody against one right answer is not a democratic solution. And so, definitely community coexisting and trying to see the benefit of all perspectives, and that you don't have to bend your values or your perspectives to agree with another perspective, but to acknowledge that another perspective is valid and that it might be better if all of our voices stood next to each other rather than taking someone else down because we don't outright agree with it. It's okay to disagree civilly, I think.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about, like, number one, just being a decent human being, you know, and if, like, religion is a vehicle for that, then that's great. But if it's not, then it's fine. You know,
but if you're forcing other people to, like, assimilate to, like, what you believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
And more just, like, finding the commonalities with each other. I mean, everyone's like, oh, the world is so divided. But, you know, just returning back to our basic humanity, like, having compassion for other people, empathy, being able to put ourselves in their shoes and be like, if that was me, how would I feel? What kind of support would I want? I think we have to get back to those principles, you know, instead of all of this jargon and everything's politicized and weaponized. It's like, let's just get back to that, to the spirit, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
What about you, Leah?
Trying to figure out how to, like,
our
the bottom line.
Yes. Wisdom.
So collectively, yes, I think the big recurring themes, right, are a love-based approach, finding community, and finding ways to honor that voice, right? And I think that's just a recurring theme of all these podcasts is we want to speak up. We want you all there listening, right, that there is different perspectives. And tying it back to the beginning of this, you know, like, what does happen when we die, right? And yes, I think it is, what do you think, right? Like, you know, and instilling that curiosity, going back to, you know, some people believe this, other people believe this, and then leaving that door open for what could be in education, in organized religion, in democracy. Being able to hear other people out and not forcing them or not dictating, right, that there is one way to view things. I'll leave this with a really funny thought also. So I guess when we were picturing, right, our loved ones and how they might be watching over us, I still get this vision of a utopia with angels. They're sitting in the clouds up there. And I do wonder, like, if I wasn't raised, you know, in Christianity, what would be my image instead? So I leave you with that. Like, can you imagine, like, if we didn't grow up in the systems we grew up in, how much of what we think and believe and feel would be so much different? Yeah. Does anyone chime in with that one random thought before we close?
If you didn't have that, it'd probably be like a Lisa Frank image with unicorns and rainbows.
Yes.
Even though Lisa Frank apparently is evil too.
Oh,
did you watch the documentary?
I started. I could get like 5 minutes. I was like, oh no. Ray and closing random thoughts before we go.
I just think, yeah, I have been seeing a lot of things and processing a lot of things, but I think ultimately find your community and find the parallels that connect you to others rather than seeing the differences.
Yeah.
And think about what really matters. Like when you are at the end of life, like what really matters. It doesn't matter that you're a billionaire. It doesn't matter that you're elected to office. It matters, like, what did you do for other people? Like, what is the legacy that you're leaving? You know? So.
That's beautiful. On that note, join our community at Your Asian Besties and subscribe on Spotify. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.